My name is Amir. For the last year, life has been nothing but dust and trying to stay alive. I used to be a teacher. I stood in a classroom full of the noise of children learning math and history. Now, the only history being written is about what we have lost. The fighting that started last year turned our neighborhood into a place of broken concrete and twisted metal. We moved from our home to a tent and then to a shelter, always running, always hoping the next place would be safe. I did not spend my days with books anymore. I spent them looking for simple things: clean water, a bag of flour, medicine for my daughter's cough. I still had faith, but it felt different now. It felt desperate. I prayed, but my prayers were often just one word said again and again. Why? It was a Tuesday afternoon, just a few months ago. The sky was that pale, hazy blue that usually meant a hot day. I had heard there was a water truck giving out supplies a few streets over, near the remains of the old bakery. I kissed my wife on the forehead, told my children I would be back soon, and stepped out into the street filled with rubble. The air was heavy with the smell of smoke and old cement. I walked fast, keeping my head down. My empty plastic jugs bumped against my legs. I had just reached the corner of the bakery when the ground moved violently. It wasn't a sound at first. It was a strong push, like the earth itself had been hit. Then came the roar, a loud, tearing noise that was so loud I couldn't hear my own thoughts. I looked up and saw the skeleton of a damaged building above me moving. I tried to run, to climb over a pile of trash, but I wasn't fast enough. The world turned black as the ceiling came down. There was no pain right away, just as the heavy weight and the feeling of being squeezed into a tiny box. Dust filled my mouth and nose. I tried to cough, but I couldn't take a deep breath. I couldn't move my arms. I was buried. It was completely dark. The noise of the outside world, the shouting, the sirens, went away instantly. It was replaced by the beating of my own heart, which was slowing down. I thought of my daughter waiting for the water. I thought of my wife. God, not now. They need me. Then the pressure vanished. I wasn't under the rocks anymore. I wasn't in the street. I was standing in a field, but it wasn't like any field I had ever seen in Gaza. The grass was green, bright, and alive. It looked very different from the gray world I had just left. The air was cool and smelled of rain and flowers. I looked down at my hands. They were clean, no dust, no scrapes. The heavy plastic jugs were gone. Amir. The voice didn't come from behind me. It felt like it came from the air itself. I turned around. A man was standing there. He didn't look like a stranger. He wore simple robes, and there was a light about him, but it wasn't blinding. It was gentle, like the morning sun coming through a window. His face held a kind of peace that I hadn't seen in a year. No, a peace I had never seen. I fell to my knees. I knew, without being told, who he was. Jesus, I whispered. The name came from a place deep inside me, something my soul knew before my mind could catch up. He stepped closer and sat down on the grass near me. He did not stand over me, but met me on my level. You are tired, Amir, he said. His voice was soft, but it carried a strength that made the ground beneath me feel solid. I am, I admitted, my voice shaking. I am so tired. Everything is gone. My home, my school, my hope. Why is this happening? Where were you when the walls fell? He didn't scold me for being angry. He looked at me with eyes that seemed to hold all the sadness of the world, but the sadness did not destroy him. I was there, he said. I was in the rubble with you. I was with the mother crying for her son. I am close to the broken-hearted, Amir. I have not left. But the evil, I stammered. The hate, it's destroying everything. He nodded slowly. Come. You need to see what this hate truly is. The green field disappeared. Suddenly, we were standing on a high ridge looking over a huge, dark plain. I recognized the layout. It was my city, but it looked different. It was covered in a thick, black fog. Look closely, Jesus said. I looked hard. The fog wasn't weather. It was coming from the people. I saw lines of black smoke rising from the tents, from the streets, even from the hearts of people I knew. This is the anger, Jesus explained. This is the bitterness. It starts as a small seed, a hurt, a loss. But when you hold on to it, when you let it turn into hatred, it grows. See how it connects them? I watched as the smoke from one person drifted and choked the person next to them. It was a web of darkness, suffocating everyone. I understand their pain, I said, defending them. They have lost so much. They have, Jesus agreed, and sadness is not a sin. But hatred is a poison you drink, expecting the other person to die. Look at yourself. The view got closer. I saw myself sitting in our tent last week. I was holding a piece of bread, but my face was twisted in a frown as I thought about the soldiers, about the war. I saw a dark, heavy stone in my chest. It was blocking the light from entering. You are carrying a burden I never asked you to carry, Jesus said. You cannot build a future on the foundation of hate. If the war ended today, but this stone remained in your heart, you would still be a prisoner. Then what do? I cried out. How can I not hate when there is so much suffering? Jesus didn't answer with words. Instead, he pointed to the open plain, and the scene changed again. The rubble vanished, replaced by an endless land of dry, cracked earth. I saw thousands of people walking in lines, dragging heavy iron chains behind them. The chains were wrapped around their ankles, digging into their skin. I looked closer and realized the chains were not made of metal, but of memories. I saw a father dragging the memory of his grandfather's loss. I saw a young boy dragging the memory of his brother's death. Each link in the chain was a complaint, a demand for payback, a promise of revenge. This is the inheritance you are leaving your children, Jesus said, his voice full of sadness. Do you see? The chain does not keep them safe. It ties them to the grave. I watched as a man in the line stopped. He was angry, shouting at the sky. He reached down and made a new link, attaching it to his son's leg. The boy stumbled under the weight. Stop, I yelled, reaching out, but my hand passed through them. You're hurting him. He thinks he is giving him a weapon, Jesus said gently. He thinks hate is a shield, but it is only a heavy weight. The scene flickered and changed. We were standing in a crowded marketplace, but it was silent. People were trading, but they weren't trading food or goods. They were trading words. I saw a man speaking into a neighbor's ear. As the words left his mouth, they turned into small black snakes. The neighbor took the snakes and put them in his pocket, nodding eagerly. What is this? I asked, disgusted. This is the market where lies are sold, Jesus said. Rumors, lies, words spoken to make people seem less than human. When you call a man a monster long enough, you stop seeing him as someone made by God. And when you cannot see God in him, you can kill him without crying. I watched as the snakes bit the people carrying them. Their skin turned gray, their eyes cold. They looked at their own families and saw only threats. Truth is the first thing lost in war, Jesus said. But you, Amir, you must watch what you say. Do not let snakes live in your mouth. Before I could respond, a high wall appeared, cutting through the marketplace. It towered above us, made not of concrete, but of mirrors, millions of sharp, jagged mirrors. On one side stood my people, on the other, the enemy. But as they screamed and threw stones at the wall, they weren't hitting the other side. They were breaking their own reflections. I saw a man hit the mirror with a club, screaming a curse. The glass broke, and his own face in the reflection twisted, looking scary and evil. He jumped back in horror, thinking he was seeing his enemy, not realizing he was seeing what his hatred had made of himself. They fight their own shadows, Jesus whispered. To see the other person, you must first stop blocking the light. As long as this wall of mirrors stands in your heart, you will never see a human face on the other side. You will only see your own fear staring back. The mirrors broke into dust, and the scene changed to a huge library. But the shelves were burnt, and the books were on fire. The air smelled of ash and lost time. I walked to a shelf and pulled out a book that was still whole. The title was the name of a child I knew, a student of mine who had died in the first week of the bombing. I opened it. The pages were blank. What is this? I asked, my voice shaking. These are the stories that will never be written, Jesus said, walking through the aisles of burning books. War does not just kill the body, Amir. It burns the future. It wipes out the inventions, the songs, and the families that would have come from these lives. I watched as the fire ate a whole row of books. It is too much loss, I wept. How can we recover from this? You cannot recover what is burnt, he said softly, but you can write a new story for those who remain. Do not let their chapter end in hate. Let their memory be ink for a story of peace. The library faded into the sound of rushing water. We were standing on the banks of a wide, dark river. But as I looked closer, the water wasn't water. It was salt. It was tears. On one bank stood the women of my city, crying for their lost husbands and children. On the other bank, separated by the water, stood women I did not know, women from the other side. But they were crying too. They held pictures of their sons. They rocked back and forth in the same rhythm of sadness. The river flowed between them, fed by both sides, looking the same in the current. "This is the reality," Jesus whispered. "Sadness has no country. The tears of a mother in Gaza taste the same as the tears of a mother across the border. Their hearts break the same way." I felt a resistance in my chest. "But their sons killed our sons," I said. "And your sons killed theirs," Jesus replied, his voice filled with a deep ache. "And the river grows wider. Who will build a bridge, Amir? If everyone stands on the bank screaming, who will cross over?" "I cannot cross," I said, looking at the dark water. "It is too deep." "You cannot cross with hate," he said. "Hate sinks. Only love walks on water." Suddenly, the river calmed, turning into a flat, smooth sea. Floating on the surface were thousands of objects: a child's shoe, a wedding ring, a set of house keys, a framed diploma. They floated in the silence, leftovers of normal lives interrupted. "Do not hold on to the things that sink," Jesus said, pointing to the floating trash. "You are sad about losing your house, your position, your comfort. These are heavy weights. In the storm that is coming, only the spirit will float. You must learn to let go of the world you knew to survive in the world that is." The sea disappeared into a dry, dusty wind. We were now inside a small, crowded room. It looked like a classroom, but the walls were bare concrete. A man was teaching a group of young children. He was pointing to a map, his face red with anger. He was telling them that their only purpose was to destroy, to take back, to get revenge. I saw the hearts of the children. They were soft like clay. But as the man spoke, I saw invisible hands shaping that clay into hard, sharp knives. The children's eyes, once full of curiosity, began to narrow with suspicion. "This is the saddest thing," Jesus said, and for the first time I saw tears in his eyes. To teach a child to hate is to steal their future before it has even started. You were a teacher, Amir. You know the power of a lesson. "I taught them history," I said softly. "Teach them a new history," he commanded. "Teach them that strength is not in the fist, but in the open hand. If you do not, the war will never end, even if the guns stop firing. The war will live on in their blood." The classroom faded, and I found myself in a playground. But the swings were rusted, and the slide was broken. Ghostly shapes of children were playing there, children from both sides of the fighting. They were playing together, chasing a ball of light. They laughed, and their laughter was the most beautiful music I had ever heard. "This is the kingdom I prepared," Jesus said, watching them with a smile. "In my presence, the labels you die for mean nothing. These little ones know the truth that the generals have forgotten. They do not care about borders. They only care about the light." One of the ghost children ran up to me. It was the boy from my street who had died. He didn't look injured. He looked whole. He handed me a small, white stone and whispered, "Forgive them, teacher. It's too heavy to carry." I took the stone and the playground faded into a garden, or what should have been a garden. It was a patch of soil in the middle of a refugee camp. Two plants were growing side by side. One was a thick, thorny bush that looked like barbed wire made of wood. It was choking everything around it, drinking the moisture from the ground so nothing else could survive. "This is the fruit of bitterness," Jesus said. "It grows fast, it defends itself, but it gives no shade and it gives no food. It only wounds those who try to touch it." Then he pointed to the second plant. It was a small olive tree struggling to push through the rocks. It looked weak compared to the thorns. Its leaves were pale. "And this?" I asked. "This is mercy," he replied. "It is slow. It requires water when there is none. It requires care. But look at the roots. The ground became see-through." I saw the roots of the thorny bush were shallow, spreading wide to take water from others. But the roots of the olive tree went down deep. They went through the hard rock, down into the dark, finding a hidden river that flowed beneath the whole city. "The thorns survive by taking," Jesus said. "The tree survives by receiving. You cannot survive this drought, Amir, unless your roots go deep into me. If you stay on the surface, feeding on the anger of the world, you will become a thorn bush." I felt tears in my eyes. It is so hard to be a tree when the fire is all around us. "It is," he agreed. "But fire burns thorns. It makes gold pure." The garden faded, and suddenly we were in a dark room. It took me a moment to realize it wasn't a room in Gaza. It was somewhere else. I saw a man sitting on a cot, his head in his hands. He wore a uniform, the uniform of the soldiers I had learned to hate. I jumped back. "Why are you showing me him?" I spat the words out. "He is the enemy." "Look closer," Jesus commanded. It wasn't a suggestion. I forced myself to look. I expected to see a monster. Instead, I saw his hands shaking. I saw a photo of a baby on the small table next to him. I saw a dark shadow hovering over him, the same black fog I had seen over my own people. It whispered fear into his ear. "They will kill you. You must strike first. There is no other way." I saw the fear in his heart, a cold gray knot that tightened every time he breathed. He wasn't a monster. He was a man enslaved by the same darkness that was trying to enslave me. "He acts because he is afraid," Jesus said. "He is trapped in the lie that he must destroy you to be safe. If you hate him, you believe the lie too. You become two prisoners in the same cell, fighting over the key." "I don't want to forgive him," I whispered, the truth tasting bitter on my tongue. "He has taken too much." "Forgiveness is not saying what he did is right," Jesus said, turning to face me. "It is taking the knife out of your own heart so you do not bleed to death. It is refusing to let his darkness become your darkness." The room grew into a large, high-ceilinged courtroom. I stood at the judge's bench, a wooden hammer in my hand. Below me stood a prisoner, covered and tied up. I felt a surge of power. Finally, justice. "Sentence him," a voice whispered from the shadows. "He is the cause of your pain." I raised the hammer, ready to condemn him to eternal darkness, but Jesus stepped forward and gently placed his hand on the hood of the prisoner. He pulled it off. I gasped. The face staring back at me was my own. It was a version of me twisted by hate, eyes hollow, mouth set in a permanent sneer of victimhood. "The way you judge others," Jesus said, his voice bouncing off the stone walls, "is the way you will be judged. If you judge without mercy, you build a prison for yourself. You are both the judge and the accused, Amir. Set him free, and you set yourself free." I dropped the hammer. It turned into a bird as it fell, flying up into the rafters. The courtroom melted into blinding white light. We were standing in a huge open hall that smelled of clean soap and flowers. Rows of beds stretched out as far as I could see. But the people in the beds weren't bleeding from bombs. They were bleeding from their souls. I saw a man whose chest was ripped open, showing a heart that was black and shriveled. I saw a woman whose eyes were sewn shut with threads of sadness. Jesus walked among them, touching them. "This is the hospital for the spirit," he explained. "The bombs destroy the body, but hatred destroys the soul. I am the doctor for the wounds that no surgeon can see." He stopped by a bed where a young man lay, shaking in pain. "He is consumed by the desire for revenge," Jesus said. "It is a fever that burns him alive." Jesus placed a cool hand on the man's forehead. The shaking stopped. The man took a deep breath, and for the first time, peace settled on his face. "I can heal them," Jesus said, looking at me. "But I need hands to bring them to me. Will you be my helper, Amir, or will you be the one who makes the wounds?" The passage ends mid-sentence, "I." Before I can repeat it exactly, I need the complete text you want me to output. Please paste the full passage and I will repeat it with no changes, no additions, no omissions. "I don't know if I can," I whispered. "You cannot do it alone," he smiled, and it was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. "But I will be with you, in every tent, in every line for bread, in every silent night. I am there. Trust in me." The world began to spin. The smell of flowers faded, replaced by the harsh sting of grit. "Amir! Amir!" I gasped, sucking in air that tasted of dust. I coughed hard. "He's alive! Pull him up!" I felt hands grabbing my jacket. A sudden rush of light hurt my eyes. Not the golden light of the vision, but the harsh glare of the sun. I was dragged clear of the broken stones. My body ached, bruised, and battered, but I was whole. A young man, a volunteer medic, was wiping my face with a damp cloth. "You're lucky, Uncle," he said. The whole front of the building came down. We didn't think anyone was in that pocket. I lay there for a moment, staring at the gray sky. The noise of the fighting was still there in the distance, the drone of engines, the shouting, but inside me, the silence of the green field remained. I sat up slowly. My jugs were crushed, useless. I had no water to bring home. But as I looked at the panicked people around me, scared, angry, desperate, I didn't feel the familiar rise of panic. I saw the black fog trying to settle on them, and I remembered the light. I remembered the chains, the wall of mirrors, the burning library, and the river of tears. I remembered the bridge of human bodies and the snakes in the marketplace, and I clamped my mouth shut before a complaint could escape. I didn't go home immediately. I stayed by the rubble. I saw a woman sitting on a pile of trash, crying into her hands. Before I would have walked past, too focused on my own survival. I walked over and sat beside her. I didn't say anything. I just sat. After a while, she looked up. "I lost my bag," she whispered. "It had my ID, everything." "We are here," I said softly. "You are not alone." It was a small thing, but as I spoke those words, I felt a tiny warmth in my chest, a flicker of that golden light. I thought of the olive tree, sending its roots down into the deep, finding water where there was only rock. In the months that followed, the war didn't stop. The nights were still loud, and the days were still hungry. But I was different. When men gathered to talk about revenge, to feed the cycle of hate, I spoke of the future, of rebuilding our humanity. When I heard neighbors spreading rumors, turning men into monsters with their words, I refused to listen. I spoke of the hospital of souls and how we were all patients in need of the same healer. When food was scarce, I shared what little I had, remembering the old man and the dog and the banquet table that awaited us. Some people called me foolish. They said I was soft, but others would come to sit near our tent in the evenings. They said they felt a peace there that they couldn't explain. I told them my story. I told them about the man in the vision. I told them about the chains, the mirrors, and the table. I told them that even here, amidst the rubble of our lives, love was the only thing that couldn't be destroyed. I am still Amir. I am still living in a tent, but I am no longer waiting for the end. I am living for the light, one day at a time, knowing that he is walking right beside me through the dust.